And to me, that's where I personally don't think so. Because again, if there's one thing, the COVID tank, and again, that was that was a black swan event. It caught everyone off guard. But one of the things that I remember vividly from that period, as well as past really panicky sell periods, is that even gold sells off for short amounts of time. And so I think people have to realize that even if you get to be that panic market, that everything is going to dump. It's people just freak out and they just dump all asset prices, even if it's something like gold, which is a safe haven, at least in the short run. So that kind of opens the door for maybe a buying opportunity if that happens, even if a spot ETF has been approved at that point. And let's not forget that the top on the last cycle was exactly when the futures ETF got approved. So here we see that certainly it wasn't like all of a sudden that was the new bull market. That was actually the top of the bull market when that happened.
As excited as we are about the news regarding Bitcoin ETFs, the Binance agreement with the SEC, and the price action of Bitcoin reflecting those and now sitting at around $30,000, we may still go lower short-term before prices go to 20 or 30x as expected. Gary Gensler and his team said yesterday that the spot Bitcoin ETF filling was inadequate, showing the applications still need to change before they are accepted. So let's see why this may lead Bitcoin to go even lower for a while.
So I think the biggest takeaway is initially we saw Bitcoin fall sharply, right? It went from around 31,000 back to 29.5, but it's kind of come back to settle in that $30,000 range. And I think what we take away from this is that it's not horrible news, it's not great news, but it's not horrible. I think the term used was inadequate. Right. So that doesn't mean they're not shutting it down. They're saying we need more information, or we need you to do more due diligence, or give us whatever we need. And then it seems like they're open at least to it getting through. From what I know, with at least the legalities between the SEC and Coinbase, they're filing not with Bitcoin specifically, it's with other things. So it's with the altcoins, right? The ones that they're claiming are securities. So maybe that also leaves a small door open. I think, honestly, I always look at price action, and price action has been pretty muted, right? I mean, it had the initial reaction, and let me show my chart here. Here was that news hitting the market. Again, we were up right against that resistance at 31,000 on the intraday. We flushed down to support, and then we've kind of just trailed off in this lower area here. And the other thing that I thought was interesting too is that today was the day that altcoins were starting to pump. And it was amazing how that just took a lot of the wind out of the sails of the altcoins. Like, so if we go to the daily chart and you look at Cardano, for instance, Cardano was up into resistance earlier today, looking like it was trying to break out and go to this next level of 33, 34 cents. And that news just slammed it right down. So by hitting back at Bitcoin and the ETFs, they kind of took out the wind from behind the sails of the altcoins as well.
So if these get approved, will Bitcoin go up immediately, or how long will it take before it finally pumps to the level we all want?
Ultimately, longer term, there's no doubt that having spot ETFs that are brought to the market by Fidelity or by BlackRock, that's a positive. That's a net positive. But you're right. I mean, we're talking about a year to a year and a half away. The crypto market barely can focus on a week to 2 weeks away. And so how do you when you talk to crypto investors, when this is so far away, do they stick around? What if, and again, this is my bear case, right? For Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is going to revisit its lows, it's not going to, in my opinion, have to do with a new fraud, a new this or new that. Even with Binance, the markets has kind of digested the chance that what the SEC has claimed is true. But the bigger question is, if you look at what's going on with the stock market and just the relentless upside action we've been seeing in certain stocks, let's say we do all of a sudden get a corrective move in stocks of 10, 20, 30%. How does that then affect Bitcoin and the crypto markets if you see a run for safety? Because I don't think at this point yet we have Bitcoin is certainly not a safe haven yet. All right, we saw a little bit glimpse of that during the banking crisis earlier this year, but it's really still been trading as a risk asset.
So according to Gareth, Bitcoin is still a risk asset and correlates with the S&P 500. Even though money is moving from altcoins to BTC, can it still hold if all the other markets tank? That's the real question, and this is the answer.
And And to me, that's where I personally don't think so, because again, if there's one thing, the COVID tank, and again, that was a black swan event. It caught everyone off guard. But one of the things that I remember vividly from that period, as well as past really panicky sell periods, is that even gold sells off for short amounts of time. And so I think people have to realize that even if you get to be that panic market, that everything is going to dump. It's people just freak out and they just dump all asset prices, even if it's something like gold, which is a safe haven, at least in the short run. So that kind of opens the door for maybe a buying opportunity if that happens, even if a spot ETF has been approved at that point. And let's not forget that the top on the last cycle was exactly when the futures ETF got approved. So here we see that certainly it wasn't like all of a sudden that was the new bull market. That was actually the top of the bull market when that happened. And I think one of the things, I mean, so there's some things that I'm seeing in these charts. And so this is the 10-year yield chart. And what we had was a wedge pattern that was a bullish wedge pattern. We broke out yesterday with that solid economic news that we got, the GDP revision to 2%. And then today we had the slightly better than expected PCE number, which kind of brought back in from this next resistance level, which is what to be expected, right? We broke out of the first one, but the second one hasn't been tested yet. It has to pull back. But this is the key, is that are we going to see a bigger breakout on yields if this channel, see this beautiful, this is actually a bull channel. In fact, it's very, very similar to what we've seen on gold play out over the last 4 years or so, the same pattern formation. And if this starts to break above this line, you at least are headed back to 410 and then maybe the highs of 436 on the 10-year. And the question is, the higher rates go, what do risk assets do? That's the question I have. And I think also what's concerning to me is the divergences that we're starting to see. So if you look historically at the 2-year versus the stock market, or the 10-year versus, there's a very clear kind of coordination between what goes on there as well as the markets. And we've seen a divergence over the last, so long, let's say the last 6 months in the market with these signals. So something weird is going on here, something that is unsustainable if you look historically at the markets and at these other signals. So M2 follows like every up and down in M2. Well, there's actually honestly been no downs until recently in M2, but you can see the vertical nature of M2 as it climbs. And in fact, let me see if I can bring this up here so we can all kind of take a look. But as M2 climbs, the market has always climbed. And let me go to the S&P 500. And then let's bring up the M2 money supply here. Let me break this up here. Let me see if I can follow. There we go.
Yep.
So what we can see here is if we go, and I can zoom, and I want to zoom out for everyone to see this, is that if you coordinate this with COVID, there's COVID, and there's your money supply increase, and then look at the run as money supply goes up, then look as money supply flattens and starts to decline, we have this. The problem is that this action here is down money supply while we have been rallying, and that again is problematic. That tells me there's something brewing here in the markets, and it may not play out for the next 6 months, we don't know, but at some point there has to be a revision back in the markets or in money supply to some central point.
If you have been following Gareth for a while, he always said Bitcoin's bull market could only start after breaking the 30,000 level. He says that this level has to break, and Bitcoin has to stay above it for a couple of days to invalidate his bear case scenario, proving the lows are in. But even though we got good news for the past few days with all the spot ETFs filling, and even Cathie Wood from ARK Invest saying this is the moment to buy Bitcoin, the resistance still holds these prices. Let's see what happens next. But meanwhile, you may want to check this video to help you understand the expected future for Bitcoin.